Hello and welcome to Red Shirt Cinema Club, a weekly podcast about fandom and watching movies with friends. This week we're entering the world of David Lynch for real, which means white picket fences, Boy Scout adventuring, and tempting glimpses into the darker side of the imagination. Yes, this week we're watching Blue Velvet. Are we ready? I'm not sure. Are you ready? I hope so. Hello and welcome back to Red Shirt Cinema Club, where we are involved in a mystery. In fact, we are in the middle of it. We are seeing things that were always hidden. I am your host, Nathan Dighton, and I'm joined by Robert Pearson.
Hello.
And David Jackson.
Keen. Hello.
We say hello after our names have been read out, usually.
We did. I'd already broken the format.
Why haven't you insulted me or Rob more softly?
I think what we've uncovered is that I like David Lynch movies too much to be glib at the beginning of the...
Also, that is the hardest bit of writing the intro.
No, Dave was going to be the detective in the yellow standing up with his brains out, and you were going to be Brad Dourif. So it would have been easy.
He's Dennis Hopper.
No, come on now.
No, you come on now.
No, you come on now.
This week we've watched Blue Velvet, the film that David Lynch wrote right before Dune and then made right after Dune. It is one of my favourites. I'm going to go through, I've written down vaguely bits about the film in chronological order as they happen in the film that I'd like to just make sure that we touch upon. But first, in a sentence, what did you think, Rob?
I thought it was a very challenging film, difficult to watch, but a very finely crafted film.
Rob and I watched it together, and it had brilliant watching a movie you shouldn't watch with your parents' energy.
Whilst some drunk people sang outside very loudly.
Was there uncomfortable shifting in seats?
I was trying to get a sense of Rob's...
I'm quite a fidget anyway, so I was just fidgeting the whole film.
Sometimes
Rob
you
checking
watch
some football scores.
No,
There's not even any football on, Rob.
It didn't get on his phone, but sometimes Rob can... It's just the position of your body can be so unusual watching a film. Like just leaning forward with one hand on your head. Sometimes that's a headache position, I guess. But
headache position. Yeah.
You got about 5 headache positions. What did you think, Dave?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I agree. Well, rather than finding it challenging, I found it interesting how it seemed to just be properly a dichotomy of things, like some really harrowing stuff. I can't say harrowing, and some really funny stuff. I was thinking about what you said about David Lynch's humor, and so I feel like I was on high alert for it, and I just saw loads of it in here.
The chicken walk, unbelievable,
but loads. I'm going to talk about lots of it.
I've forgotten the chicken walk.
It's easy to forget the chicken walk once you've had the baby wants to fuck scene, isn't it? So let's begin. The opening sequence is, I think, as close to a encapsulation of David Lynch's... Well, I mentioned last week Mel Brooks called him Jimmy Stewart from Mars.
Yes.
And I think... there's a line in this which is similarly, you said dichotomy, Dave, along similar sort of lines of dualism, which is where Sandy says to Jeffrey, I can't tell if you're a detective or a pervert.
Yes.
The answer being, of course, that he's both.
Yes, exactly.
And also neither. And I think that the opening sequence with the picket fence and playing with the music, Blue Velvet, and the fireman...
what is
waving.
That? Again, I found that funny, and I thought it was supposed to be funny rather than weird. Even I just thought that's just a funny image of those firemen going by, and I thought about the white picket fence of them. It seemed related to me, that sort of American dream, or so, especially as outsiders from America, where I think we understand it a lot through cinema. That is kind of like how I felt 1950s America was everyone waving at each other on these small suburban streets with their white picket fences, where everyone knows the name of their local fireman, and he's a hero.
The kids crossing the road in height order as well.
You spoke in the last podcast, I think, about that being like a running theme in David Lynch movies, the perfectness of suburban America and the hidden darkness underneath. And so I was sort of a bit on alert for that in this film. I don't think I needed to be. Like it was obvious and there quite a lot. But I do wonder if you hadn't said that, whether I would have picked up on it to the degree that I did. But it was just in everything very much. And it is interesting, I think, that Jeffrey sort of represents the bridge between those two worlds, the perfect and the rotten core underneath.
I think I would have been disappointed if you hadn't, Rob, because obviously the very first thing that happens is, like, in this beautiful suburbia, the camera then sort of lowers down into the ground.
Oh, yes.
And we see writhing beetles.
Yes.
Which
And the clicking and slurping noises.
But also, very early on, is it Jeffrey's dad who has like a heart attack?
Yeah, or something, yeah.
And it was just very, almost funny, wasn't it? That he was lying.
It was funny.
Nearly dead on the floor, and the Jack Russell is just going hell for
That
leather
is
on the
definitely funny.
hose pipe.
That's definitely
my
funny.
dog used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
Just
I think there's also a
and
kid
a toddler.
there.
A toddler
Yeah.
just comes along. Like everything, the picture perfect world
It's
is
so messy.
is just going on.
Yeah.
And no one has noticed. It's like you can't speak about the nearly dead man on the floor.
This will come up, I'm sure, over the next few weeks, but he's someone who talks a lot about intuition and dream logic, or the idea that images and ideas will come to him, and I think he understands them a bit more than he might let on, but basically he says some things feel right and some things don't. And there is with Lynch, I think, an intuitive sense of how to tap into sometimes discomfort, sometimes, like he uses the word dreamy. It's dreamy. And that sequence it sours, and you have the too good to be true then fading into, I can't remember exactly what shot it is that you just realise something weird's going on, but it's the insistence of the hose, and then the fact that the hose is caught, and that's like an artery in this
Yes.
guy. You just know something's going to pop, and there's just too much going on, and the dog is barking, and then the dog is on the hose, and then when that kid comes in, it's just like, I'm just thinking, who's going to pick up that kid?
Yeah.
And also the stupidest thing there, he has got like this small fenced off bit of lawn that he's obviously like reseeded, and he's just looking after his garden, and then suddenly that's getting flooded and his head's half in it, and underneath everything's just so fucking messy.
Yeah.
And I don't like, these are really small things. It's like tiny icks. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they're all mounting up. He's so I think he has such a good sense of, but I also think he's finding these just funny.
The Jack Russell is just funny. It's so funny. And also the toddler. It's like the only person in the world who wouldn't understand that there's something happening. And also, if they did understand, they couldn't help anyway because they probably can't speak or what. It's just, I thought it was just imagining having a heart attack and just looking around at nothing helping you. But it's interesting you say about dreamy, Nate, just because I did wonder. I just like half wondered, just because there's some weird stuff in the movie, and it's sort of top and tailed in a strange way, I think, if it was a dream. The end especially, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is so
We're back.
dreamlike.
We're just back.
And like the dad, I did wonder whether it is kind of his sort of dream in a
His
coma
dying
or his
dream.
dying dream, but it's so weird at the end. I think he says to Jeffrey, like, "Hey Jeffrey, I feel much better now." So it's like, is that really happening? But anyway,
the
we'll get
Jack
there.
Russell, though, it reminds me of, do you ever see, like, it's been a trend on social for ages, where people are like, I pretend to be dead to see what my dog will do.
Yes, yeah.
It's just like,
I have done that.
what did your dog do?
My old dog didn't care.
Right.
My newest dog did care.
Aw.
And she sort of like laid down next to me and brought me her little squeaky duck toy and put it next to my head, and then laid down on top of that, whining.
Oh, that's really
I
nice.
laid on the ground for like 3 minutes.
Yeah, got up laughing.
Yeah.
You idiot. I'm fine.
You approved yourself,
Yeah,
dog.
my dog before that was not bothered.
Yeah.
Scenes that follow, Jeffrey, who we're introduced to completely cold, is again something which pops up. I think you've mentioned it, Rob, that he is this junction between these two images of America, or these two worlds. I think that becomes very clear. He's also a typical young man protagonist in a way. Kind of, it's a coming of age story. He's often in Lynch's films, as we'll see from this point onwards, I don't think necessarily before, there are relatively obvious Lynch ciphers, just people who are holding the place of Lynch. And in Blue Velvet, it becomes more obvious. I think there are behind the scenes, like on set pictures of, like, there's one that really caught my eye of him throwing the stones as Jeffrey does when he's walking to and from the hospital. He's just bored. He's just going to throw some stones. And there's one of Lynch doing it. I guess they're blocking or he's showing Carl McLachlan what he wants to do. And you just kind of see like, oh, this is, of course, like this is how I would do it, Kyle, because this character is me. I guess we've just watched Dune. I'm after impressions of Carl McLachlan. Yeah. I enjoy him so much more in this.
100%.
I don't think that he's any different, but he's just...
Well, it talks about a kind of a naivety of him as Paul Atreides, which I don't think kind of really was quite right. But here, I still think he's naive. I think he's very naive. But it really works. He feels the right age for his character, I think. I guess he's probably a little bit older than he's portraying.
I think so.
But I thought it was like bang on. It just feels quite natural to him. I think he really inhabited that character really well. What do you think, Rob?
I think probably him as an actor is also sort of like the perfect person to cast when you've got this perfect version of America as seen through the lens of cinema and the slightly twisted version, the slightly twisted truth underneath, because he is a bit like that as a person, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's almost like the picture perfect poster boy.
All American,
charming, all the girls are going to fancy him. There's just something a little bit odd about him. And you mentioned the line that Laura Dern's character said, well, I can't figure out if you're a pervert or a detective.
Yeah.
And all of Sandy's girlfriends being like, oh, he's very nice looking, isn't he? And he is a handsome man.
He is.
But also it's just something a little bit odd about him.
I think as Carl McLachlan as a performer, I think he's been terrible in loads of stuff. And I do think it's a matter of how he's deployed. And in his work with Lynch, and we'll see it in Twin Peaks, and especially here, the goofiness and the sometimes being slightly unsure, it's so perfect for the tone of what's being done. And it kind of makes you realise, so often I'll be watching... especially lately with like some quality TV, like, this is terrible, I can't remember his name. Loads of people from Breaking Bad, for instance, or The Wire, and they're incredible in that role, written, maybe not for them, but, like a long-running TV show that they've adapted to, and they're perfect. And then you see them in other stuff and you think, Jesus Christ. And it sort of ruins the thing. You're not amazing. You were just amazing as that person. And I think that Carl McLachlan is...
You've made me think of Idris Elba, who I think is incredible as Stringer Bell.
He is incredible.
And he's just never achieved that same...
Well, what's he done since? He's only achieved global superstar.
But I mean, in terms of as becoming nailing a character, a performance of a character, I don't think he's ever done it as well as Stringer Bell.
What's Stringer Bell?
Oh, for God's sake!
Stringer Bell is a gangster in The Wire. Played by Idris Elba.
Do you not think he's good in Luther?
Yeah, but not as good as he is as Stringer Bell.
Do you not think he's good in Star Trek? That one that he's in?
Not as good as he is at Stringer Bell.
What about in London's Burning?
I've not seen that.
Oh, wow.
What about Pacific Rim?
I can't remember him in that.
He's in number 2, isn't he? We Die.
When will we see him as James Bond? That's what we all want, isn't it?
They still haven't announced who's the next James Bond, have they?
No, they haven't.
Need to get on with it.
Yeah.
He's too old now.
Yes.
He is too old. Anyway, Jeffrey finds an ear, which I think is perfect.
It's again quite funny. I think it's portrayed...
It's absurd.
It's absurd. It could be quite horrible.
It's got ants all over it.
And it's got some mould on it as well, I think. It looks like a little bit mouldy, and he puts it in an envelope. I don't know. I don't know whether I was looking for the humour, but I found so much of it in this movie.
I think it's definitely deliberately funny, except for I think that's we'll come to it, I guess, but there's this gradual shift. I found... And again, I'm at the point where I don't really know whether this stuff is deliberate, but it still adds to the overall effect. The thing that Jeffrey does with the ear is he goes to the police. It's the beginning of like a Hardy Boys tale. It's like very sort of down at home, suburban adventuring. And the policeman is Detective Williams, is that right?
Yeah,
and that's Sandy's dad. The guy what is going on? Like, he's the weirdest, straightforwardest man. I can't tell if it's written badly. I don't know what it is. I can't take him seriously. There's like an ersatzness to him as a human being.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't get that.
I don't dislike it.
I actually was thinking as the Williams family as being the most quote unquote normal family.
The most
characters in the movie. They're like pretty straightforward, I felt. and like including Detective Williams, who I don't know. Yeah, it was that sort of again, I suppose that really quintessential all-American.
I found
family.
them to be very much trapped by the rules of, well, both that sort of like perfect America, the dream of it, and also their, Detective Williams is bound by the law, isn't he? I mean, Jeffrey makes the comment about halfway through that, all this information I'm getting is illegally obtained. It's not I can't just go to Detective Williams with this. Like there are things that Detective Williams can't do that Jeffrey can, as he bounces between these two worlds. So you've got, Detective Williams as like the representation of nice America, and the antithesis being obviously Dennis Hopper's horrible character on the other side, and Jeffrey just bouncing in between them both.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. And there's also the divide between Jeffrey's just old enough to kind of still be a kid, and he kind of hatches that plan. He meets Sandy, and they have just switches mode again. I feel like at this point the film is still kind of finding its feet. I was watching it this time, I've watched it several times, and I was trying to think, when does it get going? And I guess I was conscious of how you might feel about it, Rob, and whether it would be hooking you. And I was like, there's nothing really to get hooked by at the moment. The ear is weird. But until really Jeffrey sets his heart upon investigating this mystery on his own, which he does with the help of Sandy, because she gives him the name Dorothy Valens. And then he decides to do what is at the beginning quite wholesome. There's a disguise, there's a distraction, there's like a little plan, and we'll go in, I'm going to do this, and then I can come in and I can spy on them. And it's like all of those, the way you can say it like a kid would say it. I'm going to dress up, I'm going to spy.
Yeah.
And then it becomes something different. But I think this is the point at which it's developing into a mystery, and there's like being drawn in. And I think that the narrative at this point is relatively conventional. But I'm still enjoying it. I like this setup. I feel like the introduction of Dorothy is my kind of take on the whole of this film is that as soon as Dorothy gets involved, she's a character who is carrying so much trauma that she cannot be born within the limits of like an adventure story about dressing up and spying on people.
Yeah.
And it just completely blows. Jeffrey's kind of like, this is cool. I'm gonna find out some secrets. And Sandy's like, oh my God, this is dangerous. But that is fun. I've got a boyfriend, but let's hang out. And they go to a diner, and it's still in the mode of that sort of 1950s Americana. And then
Jeffrey's he's the only one with food ever at the diner.
Really?
Yeah. He's never bought any food for Sandy. He's just sitting there with a sandwich in front of him, and Sandy just has a Coke.
I do feel like there is, and there are friends of mine who talk about this. And let me tell you, they're women who say that this is an extraordinarily male perspective movie. I think I would have to agree, but I would also say that this is the first time we've ever spoken about the work of an individual kind of director, and I think David Lynch I'm trying not to be just like an awful apologist for like bloke cinema, but I don't think that David Lynch makes bloke cinema. I think that he makes films in America, which is, hey, it's a patriarchy, all right? I get it. There's never been a female president, but I also think that he just makes movies basically about himself and his thoughts.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that makes it better. Certainly maybe not as a viewing experience, but I think that Jeffrey is like a version of David Lynch, and he's maybe just thinking about the things that he would like to eat, and then he's making Jeffrey eat them.
Well, Jeffrey certainly has his cake and eats it, in as much as he gets both the girls in this movie.
He kind of.
Yeah. Whether that works out for him or not, I'm not sure. But and I guess like thinking just before that, going back to like the pre-Dorothy part of this movie, I agree. Like it's a sort of quite a soft mystery, and I think it is the whole tone. The whole that absurd weirdness that's happening all the time, it's popping up all the time, that I think is what really keeps you going, is because I think, you probably could just, like you said, was Rob getting hooked? Maybe not by the mystery, but maybe, and I'm speaking for you, Rob, I don't know, but certainly I think it's because everything's just a bit off that it draws you a little bit further in, rather than just the narrative. I wrote down like just a few things, or remember just a few things, just like just a few weird shots, just the way things are portrayed. Like Sandy's entrance, I thought is just brilliant, where she's just a voice in the dark, and it's dark for ages, and you're trying to see her through the darkness, and she suddenly like appears. And when they go for that walk, they just walk past a really big man with a really small dog, and they're just stood completely still. They walk past them like he's taking his dog for a walk, but neither of them are walking. That's
I did
very
not
really,
notice that at all.
Really, they sort of look at him like, that guy. Weird that guy's out with his tiny dog and not walking it. It's like little moments like that all the way through that I think keep you going until you get to the meet, which I suppose would be encountering Dorothy for the first time, who's an extremely. It really kicks up a gear then into. We're going to show you some character in this movie.
She's European as well, and I do feel like it is a bit of a cliche, I guess, to say it, but the European film has always been sort of art cinema. It's not been restricted by a code in the same way that American cinema has, like the Hays Code, where you can't show. I think at the beginning it was like you can't show two people in a hotel room, and you know, I mean, or certainly you can't women in a state of undress, or it was like a moral code. And European cinema has never been bound by that, and so there's often been a bit
those
of
immoral Europeans,
bit of a frisson. Yeah, that's French. I will not make movies unless I can show boobies. And I think that she comes in.
Is that a Truffaut quote?
Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, it was more Fellini, but he's Italian. And I do think that she changes the tone of the film immediately because of that. Her energy is just different, but also she just has. She what am I trying to say? She bothers me on a. Her performance is. I don't know if it's brilliant or at least it's kind of frayed at the edges, but there's something in the imperfectness of it which is extraordinary. And I guess a bit like Carl McLachlan being just quite an earnest, goofy guy trying to put himself in these extraordinary situations. Similar to Isabella Rossellini in this film. And I think that it's, having watched it this time, it's that sequence where he climbs into her closet and then, to me, is like this, the kernel of the film. It's the most extraordinary thing. And definitely some of it is, it's like a 3-course meal, right? And your first course is something light and fluffy, candy floss, whatever. It's a caramel malt. And then the second course is, I don't even fucking know what's turned up on your plate. It's loads of smashed stuff, and there's like an erect penis on the side of your plate. Like, it's just this awful whatever it is. This thing comes along and it's just incredibly compelling. And I think because, and I've watched this movie basically at 3 stages of my life. I watched it when I was like late teens, and I probably saw it for the very first time, or at least parts of it, on Channel 4. And it was part of, in my head, American contemporary or modern American cinema, independent cinema, a little bit early for the Sundance, Tarantino, Soderbergh stuff, but influencing them, and that more Coen's brothers, and the Coen's brothers similarly kind of about darkness and mystery and strange things that happen. And when you're watching this, I used to watch this stuff literally on I wasn't alive in the 60s, but for some reason we had a TV from the 60s. It was like a dial tune, black and white TV that was our second TV, and I would watch this stuff in my kitchen. So it had like this whole sense of like late night and the forbidden. And so the idea of someone like Jeffrey, a young man who wants to just find out stuff, my natural inclination when the first time I saw this film was not even to second guess it or think that he might be acting recklessly, but just of course do that. Of course, put yourself in that situation. I want to see it. Then the second time, it's one of the movies which we've talked about this, and I've mentioned it early on in the podcast, in the history of this podcast, but just rewatching stuff and getting something out of it at different points of your life. And really, whenever I think about that, I think about the second time I saw Blue Velvet, which was at an all-night Lynch showing at the Prince Charles Cinema in London, maybe 10 years ago now. And this was the film that was just seemed completely different to me. And every time I've seen it, I don't get desensitized to it. I get like resensitized. Every time it's more shocking. Because like I said, the first time I was, show me this stuff. I am here for the forbidden. And the second time I was like, Jesus Christ, that there's so much fucked up stuff in this film. And I was probably a little bit older than Carl McLachlan then. And now I am closer to his parents' age, and I look at it again, and it just kind of really, not more shocking, but the nuances of what's happening to the characters and the emotional. I find it different. The scenes can barely hold all the things that are happening, and it's just turning a light on some incredibly difficult to face things. So, like, he's in the closet, and she gets a phone call, and we don't know what's happening. And I guess on rewatches, you do know what's happening, and you know immediately that she's scared for her son. So you're kind of seeing her as a mother, even though she's been set up by the performance that they've seen as this kind of exotic solo woman, and there's an eroticism to her. And then she finds him in the closet almost immediately, and there is this immediate reversal of power dynamics. She's holding that knife in an extremely phallic way. There's this one shot, profile shot, where he's kneeling. She makes him kneel, and she's holding it kind of waist height. And then she's obviously inflicting some of the pain and trying to grab hold of some control of what has been an extremely unusual situation for her. And then, I mean, I don't even know how to talk on. I was thinking, how are we going to discuss the Frank scene on our podcast? I've got no idea.
It's, pretty powerful.
Pretty powerful.
It was very
Dave.
disturbing. I felt like I was back in film studies class at college and at university, where I was shown these films that I would never choose to watch myself, from various different periods of cinema, quite a lot of them with lots of shocking material in them.
Yeah.
And so I felt I've not really been, I don't think I've been shocked, or maybe a couple of films over the years, but this is the most disturbed and unsettled I've been watching a scene for a very long time. Just incredibly unpleasant to watch, difficult to watch.
Yeah.
Like a remarkable performance by Dennis Hopper, you'd have to say, but I just wanted it to be over.
He's pure id. He's pure just rage and addiction, and sort of aggressive pleasure, and obviously a very bad person. And I guess the really shocking stuff is we've seen bad guys, and he's a really specific kind of nitrous oxide and rape bad guy. That's really specifically who he is. But the stuff which is really troubling is the dynamic of the scene. It's a young man viewing this traumatic scene, and I don't want to drop my copy of Freud on the floor, but there's the idea that it's like exploring an archetype of children either literally witnessing or coming into an understanding that grown-ups, including their parents, have sex.
Not mine.
No. But it's her reactions are the traumatic thing. The impression it's having on him is probably where I was focused the first time I saw the film, and it's difficult to understand. And I think the like I said, the actual kind of nuances and details of the scene are maybe slightly difficult to understand. You just understand that it's abusive and that she's being compelled in some way. But it's that he is witnessing her surviving, responding in a traumatic way. There are elements of her showing a desire or a desired or a pleasurable response to these things, and mostly with Frank, you can see that she is unwilling and having a terrible time. But it's also, there's enough there for it to be confusing. But then in the scenes, really, then it's kind of like, how is that a basis to have any kind of erotic interaction with Jeffrey? And I think when I was younger, when I was 19 or whatever it was when I first saw this, all I was thinking was, Jeffrey, get out that closet and you might get some sex. And then that is kind of what happens. And as that's kind of like, you kind of go like, maybe this mad, attractive Italian woman will have sex with me. And then she starts to, and you're like, yes, Jeffrey, that's great. And now you're like, oh my God, that poor woman, what could be driving her to what kind of sense of trying to reclaim some kind of control over her situation, or what the fuck
Yeah.
And it's so different to my understanding of it when I was younger. I don't think there's an explicit rating big enough for this podcast recording.
No, better tick that box.
Better tick that box.
I thought it was very interesting that when Jeffrey's first found, I don't know, I keep wanting to say that Jeffrey is kind of innocent in being there. And I mean, he can't be. He's broken into someone's apartment. Whether or not he thinks that she might be involved in a murder is really no excuse for stealing a key.
Yeah.
But he certainly doesn't plan on her being there, or to be a peeping Tom and see her get undressed or any of. And then
I'm not sure.
Do you think?
There's only because I just think there's a straightforwardness to the way that David Lynch himself enjoys women, and he doesn't. And I also think to have written this, you've got to be pretty fucked up. In terms of the specificness of Frank switching between wanting to be mothered and wanting to dominate as a father figure. God, this is difficult to talk about. And he's switching between those roles and insisting that she follows along, and he's abusive or looking for this abhorrent comfort on the fly. To understand those dynamics, David Lynch has been to some clubs.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I just don't think Jeffrey is in that apartment expecting to see Dorothy naked. But
so I was going to say about David Lynch, he talks about, I've got a copy of Lynch on Lynch, which I really enjoy. And if anybody is in for the long haul on this podcast series, do pick it up. It's a book of interviews by a guy called Chris Rodley. And he talks about getting first into photographs. And he just really straightforwardly says, first of all, I've got a camera and I was really enjoying taking pictures of factories and nude women. It was those are the two things that and when he talks about the beginnings of Blue Velvet, he just said he had an idea of sneaking into a woman's room and hiding in a closet and watching her. That was the beginning of his story.
Okay, take it back. Jeffrey was there.
And I thought there might be some sort of crime involved, and the guy at Warner was just write this scene. That's
So that was the first idea in the writer's room.
Yeah, and the writer's room just being David Lynch and his pal.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that when she discovers Jeffrey, in the tables turn, and she is, she's got that knife. I gasped when she stabs him in the face. It's really horrible.
It's not a slash. It's a stab.
It's a stab. And then there's, I guess, some foreshadowing. She is a bit like Frank at them because I remember just that she's saying, "Don't look at me," in particular, which obviously
we see this scene is before the Frank scene, right?
So foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Because then you get the impression, obviously this has been happening, and is it changing her? Well, obviously it's changing her, what she's going through.
That's right, and it does. Sorry, and really quickly, it does change the sympathies because you don't know what you see her on the phone, and it's like a tease of her as a victim, and then you see her do all of that, and you're and I think maybe to give a tiny bit of credit to 19-year-old me, she's just oh god, she's really aggressive and sort of what's going on, and she's making him strip, and then you get the reveal of her and Frank, and you're oh fucking hell.
And I felt, because she hides him in the closet, which I think is already an interesting thing, their relationship, just in those moments is so interesting. She discovers him, she's obviously furious at him, then kind of attracted to him or attracted to the situation, then scared for him and hides him in the closet. And I couldn't help think about her going through this horrible scene with Frank and knowing that she's being watched as well. But then she does seem to have, she's so after Frank leaves, she's just lying on the floor and is obviously pretty upset about the whole thing, and I think she's completely forgot that what even life is, I guess. She's certainly not thinking, and Jeffrey's in the closet, because he sort of touches her and she's shocked.
So I don't think there's any one thing, but I do think there is a male fantasy element. I think not to everything, because I think that's too straightforward and not sympathetic enough. But the idea of just that core idea of hiding in a closet, there's this excitement, this mystery, this sensuality, seeing somebody go about their business or even be in, some kind of sexual, I don't want to say just abuse, but just you can see an element of their private life, and then for you to be discovered, and then for them to be it's in my favorite Pulp song, isn't it? It's Babies. Do you know Babies? It was the first dance song at my wedding.
I know it, but I can't recall the lyrics.
It's basically the story about a guy and his friend from school, a girl, and they hide in her older sister's closet
Right.
and watch her older sister with boys. And then one time he does it on her own. And it's like classic Jarvis Cocker. It's that one time he was on her own and the sister found him. And so he had to get it on. And it's really similar to Blue Velvet. But that is a male fantasy.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think. But what's happened, I think what's disturbing is that it isn't played purely as just straightforward fantasy, because she is sort of irretrievably damaged and the film doesn't really shy away from that. But the other stuff is kind of happening at the same time. It's, I guess, these are the reasons that I feel sort of torn up in different places by it. It's
weird you get this and at the same time you get in parallel to it the sort of the coming of age romance story you'd expect to see typically in like a non-disturbing version of this film, where he and Sandy are just, you know, quite shyly, quite coyly,
going for shakes,
going for milkshakes, and she gets in his cool convertible car and
she's part of his adventure.
You know, it was almost, you know, just by, maybe it's just because she's called Sandy, but it's almost Grease-like in its sort of like innocence and its fluffiness and its purity.
And I felt certain that it was a Grease reference that she's called Sandy. It just seems too. It just has to be, but I don't know.
I think that also that it is. I don't think it's, you know, I don't want to be limiting the film is about this, but it's definitely about how this is what's going on. You know what I mean? Like in David Lynch is a polite, nice. Well, he was a nice, sort of polite man with a goofy sense of humour who obviously had thought about these things enough to write all of this fucked up stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that Jeffrey is the same. And I think his point is that the inside of people's minds is a fucking dark place.
Yeah.
And then what they decide to filter and let out is different to that. And so he can, I guess what it's saying is you can be that kind of awkward young love and at the same time be at least interested in other, you know, what happens at night in neon bars and, you know, the darkness, and there is an appeal to that for sure.
The other thing, I'm sure we can stop talking about this scene after this, but like the other thing I just felt about it is just, it is so unflinching, and I can't remember now, but almost in my head it is just like one shot. It's just
David
it's almost, yes, exactly. It's almost verbatim. It's like it stops being a film at that point and just becomes just watching this event, this horrible, harrowing event just happening. And it's like, just when will it end? And it goes on for ages. It's just a long scene of just a quite upsetting act, and it just won't end. And you're going to see all of it. I mean, like, you're going to really, are we going to see all of it? And it's like, you're going to see the whole thing. And then it's just, I don't know what I'm trying to say, really.
I thought you were going to say, and then the way that the horrible culmination, like the actual rape,
right,
is physically funny.
Yes, right.
Ridiculous, or at least ridiculous.
Yes. And I do think Frank has this lining of human, maybe not in this scene, but he's just so, he's like a bit thick and all he says is fucker. Like, and it's kind of like,
Heineken, fuck.
Pabst Blue Ribbon. That's why whenever anyone asks for a Heineken, I shout, Heineken.
That is another bit of dialogue I absolutely loved, by the way. Just, I was like, why is this in this film?
Well, the King of Beers line.
Yeah. What?
So good. Like, King of Beers.
Just, what was that bit? I just didn't know, but I loved it.
My dad drinks bud. Oh.
King of Beers.
The King of Beers.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And unsurprisingly, I did watch this in cinema class, and I did talk about it with lots of people, and I read lots about it, and there's tons written about this scene from a million different angles. And one of the lines which actually it made me laugh this time, it's so incongruous, and it's not just when they say it in Jeffrey and Dorothy's sex scenes or the scenes in her apartment. It's when it's much later, and the scene we'll talk about, which is kind of, I think, the culmination of this scene, the discovery outside Sandy's house, and then you get that awful scene. Again, I don't want to say loads about it, where Jeffrey's hugging her, she's naked, and Sandy's mum are on the other side of the room,
yeah.
and Dorothy just looks at them and says, "He put his disease in
Yeah.
Yeah, what the heck?
I loved
She
Kyle.
keeps saying it. She says it like 2 or 3 times.
And she says it earlier as well. And I think, well, the reading I always had was that there is, which I think is fair, is that there is a theme of Frank is, we've almost said it in our discussion, Frank is awful. And there are elements of her protecting herself or trying to gain control, repeating that behavior. And there's like a theme also of Jeffrey doing the same. Frank says to Jeffrey, "You're like me," at one point. And that idea, the horrible thing about that is that you cast backwards and you kind of go, well, what does this mean about Frank and his status as victim at some point, and when does someone cross the line? But that to me is, he put his disease in me. Jesus fucking Christ.
Again, no, I found that just a
Romantic?
very thin lining of, just like in the back of my head was just, I just was imagining Jeffrey. He's just looking over at Sandy, just being like, I don't know what she's on about.
I think that's exactly what that scene is about.
You know?
That is
Weird she keeps saying that.
It's the two worlds collide. It's the unspeakable private thoughts and desires crashing into the living room of your nice girlfriend and her mum.
I also really liked
Poor Sandy.
I also really liked the just before that, the kind of, Sandy's jock ex-boyfriend,
Mike,
sort of going, I'm really sorry. Right when Dorothy comes out and he's like, I don't really know what's going on. I'm sorry. And his mates are like, you said you're going to kick his ass.
Well, this is the other thing. It's like, that is, again, it's like you said, Rob, it is like Grease. It's like this 1950s, it's like American graffiti, like a race, like a drag race.
Yeah.
Like a hot rod race, like 2 cars running around like a suburban neighborhood, and the football team guy's going to beat somebody up about his girlfriend, and then from the back of the fucking the screen, a naked, beaten woman, the most desirable, like the highest paid model in the world at that time, just walks in, go like through a hedge.
Is that true? I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Maybe slightly after this, but she was actually, no, because her contract got dropped. I think maybe because of this for a short time. Anyway, she was like in the 80s and early 90s. She was the face of, I think it was Dior. But yeah, it's like this is Lynch. This is like the two things.
And this returning theme was just my big takeaway from this whole movie. I think was how you can do something really horrible like that and it still have this weird little echo of humor in the background. Certainly for me, at least, that was like seeing her come out was really horrible. She's beaten, she's been through a terrible time, she's clearly like broken at this point. And then their reaction, like you said, you're going to kick his ass, it's just a slightly silly and funny, completely inappropriate thing for that scene.
Well, and again, like a huge difference, I think, in the first time I saw it, all I was thinking was just for him, like, oh shit, like just you want him to be able to keep these two things separate. You want him to be able to deal with his secret shit and this thing with Sandy's going well. The last thing he needs is the mad, traumatized, hot, crazy woman
this lady,
that he's had sex with.
Yeah. Well, I didn't tell you when I was in the closet. Did I mention the closet? Well, I saw this and then I kind of went back a few times and I put my disease in it. It's weird. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, difficult. And I guess the key thing I would say about this is that I don't think that the 1950 stuff is ironic, which I think some people maybe do think that it is. I think that it's, I don't know, like it's more interesting that it's just he enjoys that. And then there's this other stuff as well. He's not puncturing or undermining one with the other. He's putting all these elements in place, and then the feeling is whatever the feeling is.
I wanted to ask about this, just about the 1950s of it, because I could see no reason for it to be set in the 1950s other than that's just a setting that Lynch likes. And I feel like work has been done to make it feel 1950s. Obviously sets and costumes and all that kind of stuff, but I felt like the film stock felt older and kind of grainy. It certainly was on the copy I was watching. It felt more appropriate to the time rather than whenever it was actually being shot, with mid-80s. And there was nothing kind of in the story that was inherently 1950. I didn't think there was anything that couldn't have happened in the mid-1980s, for example, really.
No.
And so I was just interested in it and just in what everyone thought about that choice and why. And I suppose maybe the 50s, again, certainly as an outsider's point of view, who only has kind of cinema to go by, the 50s America feels much more wholesome than 80s America. And I suppose, again, that dichotomy of like white picket suburbia with this dark, maybe that hits harder in a 50s America than it does in the 80s, I suppose. But I was really interested in that, especially, and I thought there was loads of little devices that he used that felt kind of like an older style of filmmaking to me as well, like fades to black that felt very kind of like scene end and chapter endy. I really like, there's just when Dorothy's first revealed, when Jeffrey knocks on her door and she opens the door and it's on the chain, and before she gets to the door there's quite a long pause and the camera just like dollies in, and it felt very, I don't know why, it just felt very like 1950s drama to me. So I felt like he really went all in on the 50s, not just in terms of, like I said, character, set and costume, but like actually in the way the film was made, felt quite of that era to me, which was
he's definitely cool. I think he was born in 46, so right. I think he grew up in the 50s.
Just like his golden era, that sort of.
I think so, but then I think it's impossible to describe this without also describing why Lynch is like he is. I think that there's like a really straightforward, he talks about what a great childhood he has. His dad worked for the National Forests Department or something, but he was basically in charge of looking after a large piece of woodland. And that's, then you're in Lumberton. And,
yes.
And Twin Peaks also has a mill.
Right.
And he just says, I think at one point he's just like, in this book to Chris Rodley, he just kind of says, if I was going to give you a reason, it'd probably be this. And you're like, oh, that is the reason. And he normally doesn't give up the reasons because he says it's kind of, people don't really want to know. And but what I was going to say is that you get through the 50s, and I think it's the same reason that Fallout is set in that post Second World War, golden era of American capitalism, whatever you want to call it. And before countercultural elements of the 60s and 70s. So the sexual revolution hasn't happened. So the stuff which Lynch is then interested in separately contrasts with that in a much more interesting way. You kind of skip those generations and then reflect it back upon itself. But I think he just likes the aesthetics, the mood, the cars, the music, the relationships between people, and I don't think there's necessarily much more to it than that, but there's a richness to it which I really enjoy. Yeah, and it definitely comes through again, like in Twin Peaks, and I guess a little bit more Mulholland Drive as well.
I think it does add a lot of kind of intrinsic stuff to just what you're seeing. I found like Laura Dern is just very beautiful, and she's very quintessential, again, that sort of American Pie, quintessential American family girl, and there's a shot of her that I found almost breathtakingly striking, where suddenly we were right in her face, when I think it's when Jeffrey's about to go upstairs to Dorothy's house, and with the key he's stolen, and she's kind of, is this a good idea? I'm not really sure. And suddenly her face, Lynch just goes like extreme close up on her face, and it's just such a striking shot.
It's funny because she is obviously, from Jurassic Park onwards, I think just leading lady looks incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
And I feel here she's so young.
Yeah.
Sometimes she's not like conventional prom queen. There's something interesting about her, even though she's obviously an extremely attractive person.
Yeah.
Which and more so in some scenes. The more made up she is in this, I think the slightly stranger she looks. And there's a couple of scenes where she's barely wearing, well, she's probably wearing tons of makeup, but made to look more natural. And you kind of go, oh my God.
I did think she was absolutely fantastic in this. I think that she's just
I'm glad you said that, Dave. And I will, and again, it's partly because discussions I've had with, outside with other friends who say, there isn't any, Jeffrey is the only person really with any kind of perspective in this film. Dorothy's like a trauma and Frank is a cartoon. And I actually think watching it this time, I think that there is much more respect for Sandy in the film than I thought. She isn't just like an empty vessel or a kind of just an influence on Jeffrey. She's she's right
Yeah,
for a start.
extremely.
And I think there's more kind of depth to her, and and forgiving in the end, and not in Jeffrey needs to be forgiven, and so he is forgiven. I thought that there was like a genuine sort of sensitivity to her, which I really liked.
Yeah.
And I did think that Laura Dern was great. I'm just checking to see if there's any other Oh my God! I mean, we haven't.
I mean, there's tons.
We haven't talked about Brad Dourif yet.
No, exactly. Well, the Joyride is the.
When I saw his name in the credits, I did think, maybe Brad Dourif plays a nice person. No.
No, it's just one of
and
a
Dean
horrible
Stockwell as well. And again, watching
Stockwell.
the opening credits, having spoken about, does Lynch have his favourites? And I was like, well, we've just seen Dune, and we've just seen Dean Stockwell, Brad Dourif, Carl McLachlan.
Yeah.
And they're all in this movie.
Yeah, they are.
And yes.
A rogues gallery. So
Yeah.
Dean Stockwell was friends from the 19... He was a child actor, Dean Stockwell, which I didn't realise until relatively recently. But he was part of the similar kind of gang in the 60s and 70s with Dennis Hopper. So
Right.
they were,
So
they
who
were
was Dean
pals.
Stockwell in this?
He was Ben.
Ben.
The man who sang...
Into a Light.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've completely forgotten about him until now. Yeah, that
he
was
was Dr.
strange.
Huey from...
Yes.
That was a
Dune,
strange scene, that.
It was. I think that was always my favourite scene. I think in the film, Lynch films often have elements of like really specific staged performance.
Mm-hmm.
There's like in Eraserhead, which we haven't watched as part of this series. There's a radiator in the main guy's room, and there's it's like a old 1930s style ribbed cast iron radiator, and it kind of it's got slats in it, but it's also from front to back it's kind of it's got two tubes and it cuts out an oval, and so in the middle there's a stage and there's a lady in the radiator and she sings a song, In Heaven Everything Is Fine. So,
I was interested in the role that music has in this movie as well. I mean, obviously it's called Blue Velvet. I assume after the song, which is a big part of the movie, which again is part of Frank's particular interests.
He's got
I
his
suppose.
his
Is
square.
there? I mean, what writing has been done on that? Like, why? What does that represent?
What
the
I
blue
did
velvet in his mouth.
Well, I think maybe he just likes the blue velvet in his mouth. I always thought that it was about, and I was writing this really specifically from the point of view of how the nature of film and filmmaking had been changed by the emergence of home video, because people owned things, but also because movies are it's a medium of light and they're ephemeral, and you go and you watch them and you can't really touch them, and then suddenly people can collect them, and loads of fandom is about that. It's like, why do you want a fucking 2-foot cave troll? It's like, well, because I really like Lord of the Rings. It's like people just like to have items and to own them. And I thought that there was like an element of, because what I was saying about Lynch and performance, and there's often scenes of people on stages and whether they're kind of real or not. I think the fact that Ben is miming is just interesting. That the performance, there's a scene we'll see in Mulholland Drive. Either of you seen Mulholland Drive?
No.
There's a fucking incredible scene with another Roy Orbison song, but in Spanish. And that there's a kind of we'll talk about it at the time, a kind of a thematic similarity there. But just that I felt that Frank's, I don't know what the backstory is, right? But you kind of get the sense that Frank's probably seen Dorothy performing and then has decided to do all these horrible things to her. And he's in love with her performance as much as he is with her. And that is symbolized, manifested in the literal patch of blue velvet.
He's
from
there
her dress.
fondling it whilst he watches her sing.
Exactly, yeah. It's like holding a poster waiting for it to get it signed, or holding a CD of somebody,
Right.
like, I don't know. Well, I'm sure that there's lots of... When Lynch was asked what Blue Velvet meant, he said it's a song and a texture. So I just think that just in a loose way with no specific meaning, when you listen to stuff or you hear stuff sometimes, it just feels all...
That's where your Twitter bio's from.
It's a song and a texture, yeah. That's true.
But it's also this song that Ben starts to perform and then is cut short, which then comes back after the joyride when
there's a lady
Jeffrey's getting beaten up
dancing on the top of the car.
Frank's
I didn't have to...
put the song on.
Yeah,
put the song on. I like that he.
That was quite a challenging scene.
Kind of like that he has songs for things. I guess he really likes music, Frank.
I felt like there was a oh man, I can't remember a writer from New York in that he wrote Exit on the. Oh man, no, I can't remember. But like a sense of like gangs, street gangs in America in maybe the 50s, 60s, having elements of, like, I guess as part of their sort of rebelliousness or counterculturalness, like sexual deviation expressing itself in not just heterosexual ways. And I'm being vague about it just because I don't want to be specific because I can't remember the specifics of the story that I'm talking about. And there is, like Frank says, I'll fuck anything that moves. And I think there were there's loads of deleted scenes for Blue Velvet which actually I've not seen because they only got discovered after I had been super into all of this stuff. And also I'm not sure that Lynch, for example, is very dismissive of old versions of scripts and deleted scenes. He's like, well, that's not in the fucking movie. And the reason I didn't put it in the fucking movie
I like that.
is because I decided it wasn't part of the movie.
Yeah.
But there was I think oh man, Andy Warhol was friends with Dennis Hopper and wrote in his biography that Dennis had spoken to him about a scene in which Andy Warhol couldn't remember whether Frank rapes Ben or Ben rapes Frank. Right. I know which way I think that scene would go if I was a betting guy. But either way, it didn't make it into the film. But there is that scene.
Thanks for getting us to film that, David. I'm not sure about this scene, but we're going to film it anyway.
But David, there's no cameras here.
Yeah.
There's and it's not in the deleted scenes or spoken about really anywhere else. So maybe he made it up. But that scene in the car, which you found difficult, Rob, I felt like was the vestige of that sort of the aggression inherent in just like there's not much sensual or certainly loving about Frank's sort of take on sex. It is like a violence and a power thing, like there's an imposition to it. And I felt like that was in that scene. Actually, but the stuff in the car, it's almost hilariously, I know I probably did when I first watched the movie. People watch those scenes just because this is Frank at his most unhinged. He's agitated. And I guess, again, we kind of talk about, why would someone end up acting like that? And it does come maybe from like an insecurity, but he's so unhinged. And then there's this there's like a calmness to the scene where Ben mimes, but then it's mad that he's miming into a light. Into a mechanic's light because it looks a bit like a microphone.
Yes. I had no idea, and maybe I'm being very naive, but I had not no idea, but I was quite unsure about exactly who Ben was and what that place was. Like, was he a drug dealer? Was it?
I was very unsure. I got the impression that we weren't really supposed to know.
Yeah.
It was just, here's a place we're at now. Isn't it weird?
Yes.
And was it where it has something to do with the place where Frank was keeping the hostages
yes,
as well? They were there as well.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it's just a house.
It was
a weird
with some
house somewhere.
like weird group of people in there. And it was quite horrible that Dorothy like goes through that door and sees her son.
It's got a neon sign on the outside, doesn't it?
Oh,
is it This Is It?
Yes, I think it's
this
is it, or this. Yeah, I think it's This Is It.
But it's almost just that's enough. And it's almost, I do feel like in that dream logic or archetype logic of this is a place where bad people hang out and sometimes weird stuff happens.
Yeah.
That's almost enough. Like if you can imagine this place existing on the fringes of like a little neighborhood in LA that you wouldn't like to walk through, and it's 2:00 in the morning, then that's enough of background. And
again, another funny thing. I think that Frank says This Is It when they pull up, and then that's what's written on the neon sign. And I also remember just in the room, I think that one of the goons, he's not in it very much, is called Paul, and he just keeps introducing himself. He's like, I'm Paul. It's just so funny.
That's
and the woman dancing on the car.
Lady's made some
funny
decisions.
She's terrible at dancing.
She's having a great time.
She's having a great time, but she's terrible at dancing. I really like that Jeffrey hits Frank. And it's interesting to me.
Brave Jeffrey.
Frank is not really sure what to do and doesn't.
He almost respects it.
Yeah. He doesn't kill Jeffrey, which I think is very much within his wheelhouse, and it is, I think, a little bit of respect there. That's
interesting that we feel like earning respect from Frank is in some way important because we like him to respect that.
Only because
we're all scared of bullies. I guess.
Is that when when he gets beaten up? Is that where he? No, I think it's before that. Just where Jeffrey wakes up in his bedroom. There's just another weird shot where we just sort of just pan up.
So where he's just
up the
crying?
wall, and on the wall he's just got like a little rubber hand toy thing,
Yeah.
like a monster,
like a little skull.
boglin kind of thing.
That was the first time I'd seen the boglin, or whatever the
It's
fuck
just
it
like,
was.
What's that? Why is that there? I kind of love these things in this movie, though. It really fascinated me, and does. I think it needs that because it is the start of the movie, as we said, is maybe quite soft, and then it gets into stuff that is way too hard.
Yeah.
and the through line is this weird stuff that's kind of funny and makes you forgive both sides of that coin.
Well, and on that note, there's two scenes I want to talk about with Sandy and Jeffrey, but just on that, I've just remembered. Is it the two guys that work in his dad hardware store? They both called Ed.
Yeah,
Does he
two
call
Eds.
them- and he calls them Double Ed.
Double Ed, that's what they're called. No, is it? Yeah, or is it two Eds? But yeah.
Oh yeah, one
There's
of
a
them,
great
one of
bit.
them's blind.
The fact that you've said that, sorry, it will definitely be because the joke is two Eds are better than
Yes,
one.
exactly. That's what I was thinking because it makes no sense. There's another brilliant bit where Jeffrey's in there. He's on the phone to Sandy. He's like, and he says, "Pick you up at 8." And then we cut to them serving a guy buying an axe, and it takes about 15 seconds. This shot of him buying an axe, and he puts in the price, and the guy's holding an axe in a very unusual way. And then we cut back to Jeffrey, who just says like, "Sure." Like the conversation is just so unusual and weird.
I also really like the how many
fingers am I
and
holding
he
up?
just
Yeah.
taps him
Yeah.
really up and he goes, I still don't know how you do that. Brilliant.
They were
But the
great.
scenes I was going to talk about were, and actually the first one of these really jumped out at me the middle time I saw this film. So the kind of the second era of watching Blue Velvet. And it starts terribly, I think. It's when they're in the car and it's at night, Sandy and Jeffrey. And Jeffrey says, why is there so much trouble in this world?
I wrote that down.
Why is there so much trouble in this world? And it's the kind of thing which people say a lot in Twin Peaks. Overwrought, juvenile. Sandy responds with just fucking poetry, and it's really genuinely affecting.
Is it her dream?
Yeah.
Yeah.
About the Robins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just beautiful. And then I've already mentioned it in my intro, but the scene in the diner, and I was watching this, and David Lynch passed away a few weeks ago, and I was thinking if you were going to make an edit of David Lynch as a tribute, this would be the line you would put in the middle. And I've already said it. I'm involved in a mystery. I'm in the middle of a mystery. I'm seeing something that was always hidden. And he's basically just saying why he wants to do the things that he is doing. He is the Lynch analog in this film. It's as close as you get to Lynch saying these are the things which are interesting to me, and this is why I'm exploring these worlds. And I feel like those two scenes show, I think they're super positive and lovely, and they show a really nice connection between Sandy and Jeffrey.
Yeah, I agree. I do really like their relationship. Some of it I found almost painfully accurate. To something in me, like the sense of getting to know someone, of liking someone, and the awkward moments where you mess it up, like doing a chicken walk or something. Like it's sometimes they have these like extremely like the stupid King of Beers thing. Like that is like nailed on. I completely understand that moment.
You just need to say something. Yeah. King of Beers.
King of Beers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
The music's nice.
it's so well observed, some of that stuff, and then they have like the other, exactly like you said, the overall like why bad things happen or whatever it was, like
Another sort of Lynchian extravagance. And there are a few of these. Holy shit, I've just remembered one which we won't see from Twin Peaks because it happens in season 2, but it's a racist one, so I'm
Right.
glad that we won't get to see it. And that is Frank's fucking disguise, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
like,
Oh wow!
the well-dressed man. I was like looking at the picture that he took. I was like,
the well-dressed man's got enormous eyebrows.
yeah.
Again, it's got to be fun.
Yes.
He must know that that's funny.
Yeah. It is
And also,
funny.
he was only with the same cop that he'd been with anyway.
Yeah.
Like, why has he got a disguise on?
He's just unhinged. It's just one of his
One of his things.
one of his kinks.
And then
I'm now going to be the well-dressed man
Yeah.
with the alligator briefcase.
yeah, we kind of get back on track for the end, post Jeffrey going and telling all that he knows to Detective Williams. And the denouement then slides into, I've got to give it some respect, 'cause I don't know how much, I mean, a competent filmmaker for sure, but very much a man dancing to his own tune, David Lynch, and interested in ideas. And again, like I said, lots of them being intuition. I don't think there's necessarily a storytelling focus, but I think that the last few scenes are really exciting, and in a way where the weirdness, again, like the scene probably that stuck with me most, apart from the Dorothy scene, the thing where I was just like, I'm transfixed by the oddness of this, and I'm going to make liking David Lynch my personality for probably 10 years after this, is when he walks into Dorothy's apartment and the TV's on static, there's a dead man in a chair, and there's a man seemingly dead but standing up.
What the heck's going on here in this scene?
I fucking love it so much.
Why are they in the apartment? Why are they in Dorothy's apartment?
That's Dorothy's husband on the chair.
Yeah, I got that. But why is the corrupt cop in there as well?
I guess he was working with Frank.
And has Frank killed them both?
I guess Frank just decided to fucking cut his losses.
Left them inanimate.
Yeah, and must have shot him in such a way that he is still standing up.
Just kind of...
Because he does, he shoots him later in the scene, and he does just crumple down onto the floor.
He does. He shoots him through the chest. Yeah. He shoots the TV and then the yellow man. He's like tidying up with a gun. Oh, Frank.
It's a great moment. Frank gets his just desserts. Jeffrey explodes his head all over the floor.
Yes. Very relieved.
The Williams family Williams run in, and Detective Williams
the Oedipal comeuppance of shooting Frank. But I guess the tension in a lot of Lynch, or the interesting thing in a lot of Lynch in terms of mysteries and setting up things which are inexplicable or tantalizing. I've spoken to you about this loads before, Dave, the thing which I have eventually come to value and maybe understand is a bit hoity-toity of me, but the stuff for which I really enjoy about Lynch is there will be things which mysteries that you're teased along to understand them, and that sense of wanting to know more and wanting to understand is incredibly compelling. And then understanding that actually there might not be an answer, and that's okay. I find coming into that apartment, it's almost like I don't know. That room is an answer, and it's a perfect answer because it doesn't really make sense. It's a revelation of a situation, plot threads, a victim, a crime and whatever. He's discovering something, and even then, in that moment, it's like this. There's enough oddness to it that you're kind of like, what the fuck? There's such an atmosphere and a feeling to it.
I can't remember why he goes to Dorothy's apartment. That's the only thing, because I didn't find it weird at all. That he was there, true. And again, I think you're right. He's finding the aftermath of something.
I think he's discovered that he didn't realize that Frank is the well-dressed man. So then he's like, I'm just gonna go.
He definitely discovers it's Frank, doesn't he? I think he does.
He's being chased. No, he's being chased in. That's what sends him into the apartment. He's being chased in there by the well-dressed man, or he's already running up the stairs.
He went to look at it, and then he was going, and then he was trying to leave, and then Frank arrives.
Yeah, but I totally agree about, or maybe I'm surprised now thinking about it. It is a weird thing to stumble upon. I mean, very weird, but it didn't strike me as I didn't wonder about what had happened, really. I could take it on face value. I understood who the characters in that place were. I knew where we were. And it was like, well, of course this has happened. Of course the husband's dead. Of course something's happened to the police officer. Maybe he's been double-crossed, or he was trying to kill the husband and it went wrong. I don't know. But I'm kind of shocked at myself for not really caring about the kind of ins and outs of that, but just accepting I get it. Here we are now, but it doesn't really matter because Frank's coming, and God,
you just needed a chase.
What's
right?
Jeffrey going to do?
You needed, like you said, the Williams, Sandy's trying to rescue him and loves him, and her dad's there, and her dad is like you said, this patrician, this sort of orthodox figure who's he just say it's all over now, Jeffrey, which I love because it was almost like, in a way, Frank almost forcing Jeffrey to kill him means that Jeffrey is going to be fucked up forever. And just that, the sort of the shallowness of it's all over now, Jeffrey. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I've actually just been through quite a lot. Just really quickly, just on something I read earlier on in Lynch on Lynch pertaining to this scene and maybe explaining your point here. He talks about how he wrote Blue Velvet before Dune, as I mentioned, for Warner Brothers, and the guy at Warner just didn't like it. He said it had all the, what he said, I wrote 2 scripts and they were horrible, this is in italics. And this guy at Warner's who was excited at the beginning was screaming at me on the phone. Horrible in what way? They just weren't there. It was bad. You know, he hated them. There were maybe all the unpleasantness in the film, but nothing else. And then later on he said he wrote more drafts, and he said that he had a dream. And the dream was the ending to Blue Velvet. The dream gave me the police radio. The dream gave me Frank's disguise. The dream gave me the gun in the yellow man's jacket. The dream gave me the scene where Jeffrey was in the back of Dorothy's apartment sending the wrong message, knowing Frank would hear it. I don't know how it happened, but I just had to plug and change a few things to bring it all together. Everything else was done apart from that.
Wow.
Dream logic, man.
What a dream.
Yeah. You know, similarly, the almost identical thing happens with Mulholland Drive later on as well. So.
Well, he has another dream for the ending of that one.
Mulholland Drive was initially a TV pilot, which was rejected, and he felt very bad that it was rejected, and he was excited about this project. And I think Canal Plus, like Studio Canal, I think it was them, maybe another European studio, came in and said, well, we would release it as a film. And he said, it's not really, it's open-ended because it was supposed to be a TV show. And they said, well, if you can think of a way, let us know. And so I think he meditated or had a dream. And then he was like, oh, shit.
I mean, can you imagine reading that script for Blue Velvet? No way would I be going, yeah, okay, let's make it. Because, like you've got, at least with the final thing, you've got the benefit of how it looks and all the performances and everything. But
and
like,
how the music changes things.
Yeah, and just reading it written down, I'd be like, what's wrong with you?
Baby wants to what?
Yeah. No, we're not making this. Get out of my office.
Let Tits see her kid.
Yeah.
Just horrible.
Oh, you're stealing all my best lines.
I wanted to talk about the music. This was the first film that he worked with Angelo Badalamenti, who then worked with him on, I think, everything.
Oh, right.
And I love the music, and it's very the through line between this and Twin Peaks. And actually, the very beginning opens with a curtain, and then the very dramatic, serious music that could be from a 1950s noir, but in general, it has kind of more of a 50s vibe. I don't know, Dave, you like music. I wondered if you had any particular thoughts.
Just that. I really loved the noir stuff. I got that. It was bang on the money for me. That sort of dramatic. I mean, I don't know if I can sum it up better than noir. That feeling is quite distinct, and that, like, it did cut
heightened.
Through. Yeah, like it really.
Actually, really reminds me of the who was it? Bernard Herrmann, like his Psycho score.
Yes,
it's quite similar to that.
And again, I guess it felt really appropriate. I don't know why I'm obsessed with a movie being made in the 80s, but it's set in the 50s. But I just feel like they went to extra lengths. Like I said, I'd love to know about the film stock, because it really did feel like older to me than what would have been contemporary at the time. And yeah, the music was just like right on the money. Just helps bring it all together. I think what I'm trying to say about it is, if I didn't know it was made in the 80s, I would have definitely thought it was made in the 50s, which I think is not true of a lot of stuff that's set in a different, time period, obviously. And I think they went to great lengths to make it feel like really, really accurate. And the music is so good at that.
So in the 80s, when people were going to the cinema, did they feel like they were watching a stylized film? That would be interesting to know.
I guess it'd be like a movie now set in the 90s. Which is
but
terrifying.
made to feel like it was made in the 90s.
Yeah, there are films
shot on DVI or something.
Right. Yeah. Well, we should probably leave Planet Blue Velvet. I'm very excited that next time we will be.
There's one more thing I want to talk about. Just the end, but in particular the very end with Dorothy, where you feel like. It's so nice to see her smiling and genuine with her son, and then it just fades, and she's sad, and is
she sad?
Yeah, I think so. She's like really happy with her son. It's like such a genuine look she has with this kid, to the point where my brain literally thought, like, I wonder if that's actually her son, or like it seems so genuine, this moment she's having with this boy, and the camera sort of moves in onto her face, and she's really happy, and then she's a bit less happy, and then she's clearly thinking about what she's been through or something, and it's just like tinged with real sadness, and then up goes the camera into the blue sky, Also, we got to talk about the animatronic birds.
The birds, man. That's what, when you were talking at the beginning about, is this a dream or
Yeah.
what's the, and I just think that it's the perfect way, apart from the sort of slight staidness of it, the animatronic bird is the best way to undermine the perfectness of those scenes. Just
Yeah.
like, look, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Is that deliberate though, or is he genuinely trying to get really good animatronic birds in there?
I
You can never tell whether he's taking the piss or not.
Well, I think I'd give the Lynch answer of that this would just seem like the right way to do it, and that it's good either way. He really likes making stuff. There's loads of little puppets and created stuff in all of his films.
There were two other points in the movie that made me think, is this a dream? And it was just one I think is quite near the end. Both the same thing. There's two bits where just a character we're just looking at a character and they just open the iris up and it just gets more and more exposed. At one point, it just gets brighter and brighter. The other point, it properly goes blown out and to white, which I think that's right at the end before the dream. Before the dream sequence, before the end, which feels like a dream. But it was just an interesting thing that really I could discern no purpose behind it or what it could mean. You know, it just felt like, well, this is happening. I don't know why it's happening. What does it mean? What's it trying to tell me? And the only thing I could think of is it's just like an extra hint that this is all not real. But I don't know if anyone else noticed those bits.
Dreamy.
Or felt anything of it. Anything about it, but yeah, I think top and tailing it with that so saturated, pure, brilliant American life. Getting to see the stupid fireman again at the end, just waving at the camera as he goes by slowly. I was just like, surely
We're back. Yeah. Well, I guess if you had a pat interpretation, you would say that all of this stuff is always under the surface, but you know, like, Middle America finds a way to bury it and do a barbecue and look at
I suppose it's kind of sad actually that even Jeffrey has buried it all, and so has Sandy. They're just in their kind of stupid little boring lives now, where he just sits out on the patio and she makes him lunch, and his dad's better, and the dads are talking.
I like that there's no judgment. There isn't a sense of, there is no alternative shown in the film which is really positive. There's just absolute trauma and violence. The interest in those things is, I think, shown to be fraught with danger, but not necessarily negative. And the only alternative is like the sort of the niceness. And I think Lynch enjoys that too.
And I suppose Dorothy isn't able to bury it. And that's kind of what the very last shot is about. Is like, you know, she's still living with this horror. It's not going to go anywhere.
David Lynch was in a relationship with Isabella Rossellini.
Was he?
Around this time, yeah. You know that she is the daughter of Ingrid Bergman.
No.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, who was in obviously like a Hitchcock. And that's the music, that's what reminded me.
Yeah.
And, and Thingy Rossellini, the Italian movie director. That was her dad. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Should we do our questions?
Do the questions.
I can't remember what they are. Best stand-up performance.
I think I was thinking about this at the time. I tried to really think about it, and I think it actually is Laura Dern.
Really?
I really enjoyed her performance, and I think maybe because she is just
in a movie.
She is the
Dorothy and Frank.
I know, but I honestly find Dennis Hopper's performance and maybe just Frank's character just like bit too much for me. Like, and
when he was petitioning for the role, he told David Lynch, "I am Frank. You have to give me this role because I am Frank."
Oh God! And then
I don't think he meant it in a good way.
I would say, to be fair, like maybe I have overlooked Isabella Rossellini because earlier when we were talking, I was thinking that when watching the movie, I couldn't conceive of her as being an actor. You know, like it was just
the film is something which is happening.
It's just like she is. You know, if Dennis Hopper is Frank, she is Dorothy. Like it's a crazy performance. And I suppose maybe the reason I gravitated towards Laura Dern is because I think her character is just pure.
She's the only
nice,
normie.
Something to hold on to in this otherwise crazy film. And I mean, that's probably it. But I just really liked her, and I really wanted her to do well. But I did just find her performance excellent.
Mine is Rossellini.
Yeah.
I think she's just so good. And also just the mad vulnerability of everything that she goes through in the film. And also, like I said, being this popular, well, not popular, enormously industry-dominatingly successful fashion icon. And she is the nudity and the physical exposure in this film is anything but erotic or complimentary.
It's really not.
It's fascinating hearing the context of that, because that's obviously a big deal, right? And would have been like a huge element of why those scenes would have been probably even more shocking than it would have been.
Let me double check when the timeline was, and maybe she became very famous.
I think the only other thing, in my defence of choosing Laura Dern over Rossini, is I do think that all she has is this. It's almost kind of one note, just horrible. She doesn't get to do anything else than be traumatized, exactly. Which is, and I think she's incredible at it. But that's all that she gets. Whereas I suppose with Sandy, I get to see her go through a range of different kind of emotions and it was
Lancome. It was, or is it Lancome? I don't know how to say it.
Lancome, I think.
Yeah, 82 that she started there. So she was huge already. Sorry.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that is a huge bit of context. And like you said, it's interesting just pointing it out. In no way is it erotic at all. It's just not. It's just.
No.
It's not nice.
What about you, Rob?
I think it would have to be Dennis Hopper. I didn't enjoy his performance.
Heineken.
But if, you know, and I don't mean that as I think it was a bad performance. I just think he made it very unpleasant, so I didn't want to watch him.
He's a force of nature.
Horrible. But I will unfortunately remember that performance now forever. I'll always remember that scene.
Again, I do think there's a bravery to being that fucking truly unhinged.
I mean, really.
Abhorrent.
I mean, if he genuinely said that to David Lynch, "I am Frank," and he's just to have that inside of him, to be able to bring that out in a film, it's quite terrifying.
Well, there's another anecdote. I think he was probably talking about his history with drugs and alcohol and insane behaviour in the 60s. There's another anecdote, which is the scene where they mime in dreams. It was supposed to be Frank who did it, and because he and Dean Stockwell were friends, they tried to learn the lyrics together. And I think that Dennis Hopper had asked Dean Stockwell to help him because his brain was fucked, so his memory was fucked because of substance abuse over the years. And when they were on set, Dean was doing it along with him to help him. And you have those, and David Lynch describes Dennis as being in character but trying to look at him to remember the words, and then that's kind of the dynamic that he saw and was like, this should be the scene instead. This is fucking incredible.
That's cool.
And that's, you get that kind of detached insanity of Frank. Insanity is too lazy a word, but you get that anxious detachedness from him. Anyway, it's fucking great, isn't it? Best line in the movie, King of Beers.
Yeah.
Obviously.
My favourite line was Heineken fuck.
Heineken, fuck.
You like beer, Jeffrey? Yeah, you got any Heineken? Heineken!
I love that he's like a college boy and he's gone and enjoys a European beer, which the fucking lunatic Frank thinks is bullshit. I actually agree with Frank on that one. Pabst Blue Ribbon. First time I ever saw Pabst Blue Ribbon was at a gig that I went to in Manchester University, and I drank it and I thought it was disgusting. But I love Blue Velvet, so I tried.
I do think that this movie is extremely quotable. I think it's probably like I can't remember most of the lines I would like to quote, but like there's loads of stuff like that.
Do you know? It's difficult when Jeffrey tricks Frank into thinking that he is in the back room, and Frank is just so derisive about how, you stupid fucking idiot. All of that. I love how just the hatred. Oh, it's so good. And best scene? Standout scene.
Yeah, standout scene.
Should we skip standout scene? Let's skip standout scene.
Yeah.
The nice one in the car about the robins.
That was nice.
The Mysteries of Love by Julie Cruz, which I didn't realise. Another little thing about that. This Mortal Coil did a cover of the is it Tim Buckley
yes.
song to the Siren, and he played that on set because that was like the mood that he was going for. So it's a lovely song. I think it pops up in a later film, I think, and they couldn't get the rights to it. It's too expensive. And so he asked Angelo Badalamenti or Angelo Badalamenti just said, I could write something. And I think that Lynch was kind of like, oh yeah, could you? This song that I really want. And then he wrote something and did it with Julie Cruz, and that's the one that's in the...
That's great.
I've listened to that song a million times. I've got a David Lynch playlist. What else do we ask? There's one other thing, isn't there?
No, that's it. We do line and we do scene and we do performance.
That's the end.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm really interested, Rob. Just before we sign off, I was just so fascinated by your journey of Dune and Blue Velvet. And just did you know anything about Blue Velvet before you watched it?
No,
because the title of the movie gives nothing away.
No,
and obviously, Dune is just something you actually hated.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm asking you really. I've just.
What a journey.
Did you feel? How did you feel going in to watch Blue Velvet? Did you think that you were probably going to hate it? Did you think it was going to be like Dune?
No, I didn't think it was going to be like Dune. I knew that it was not going to be like a fantasy thing. I was relieved that I could understand what was going on.
Yeah.
Was my overriding emotion sort of going in and during the start of the film. Yeah. And then quickly to be honest, I didn't really think about Dune at all during this film, which made it quite a pleasant 2 hours.
Do you know, I actually did, because there was a couple of scenes where we just
with the worms.
where we just looked at Kyle MacLachlan's face and he didn't say what he was thinking, and I just imagined him whispering, "God, I really fancy her."
Yeah.
And it's funny that didn't happen.
Do you see what I mean when I was talking about how they're an incredible pair of films? Same director, same producer, same star.
Yeah.
Very different
Yeah.
style of filmmaking.
I mean, so different.
Only 2 years apart they came out.
I don't think I would
Wild.
think that. I would never think they were made by the same man.
Crazy times. Next week we're going to be watching some Twin Peaks. I'm going to try and watch all of season 1. I've watched 3 episodes already. I don't know, how much do you think?
I'd like to try. I mean, I think you suggested we watch 4. We try and we watch 4 episodes. I'm up for that. I'm going to try and watch the whole season before we record.
I have already seen season 1 of Twin Peaks, but too long ago for me to really remember much about it.
And I have never.
An interesting one for you, because I think you'll remember as you go, and then it will also hopefully connect with things that we've just seen in Blue Velvet, to the point where you might just go, this guy has only got a very small bag of tricks and he just gets the tricks out all the time. But I think I really like the relationship between the two things, and it kind of, we're talking about that change in tone, and now he's operating on television for Twin Peaks, and so the boundaries of how dark he can go and how deep he can delve in that stuff is more limited. So it becomes something slightly different, but it's the same kind of dynamics at play, I think. In terms of just describing how we get from 1986 Blue Velvet to 1990 Twin Peaks, I would just read a little bit from David Lynch just explaining it. So Twin Peaks is co-created and written by a guy called Mark Frost, who is a more straightforward television guy. So Chris Rodley asks in this book, Mark Frost, your partner in the creation and making of Twin Peaks, came from television and had a reputation for his involvement in successful cop shows like Hill Street Blues. Superficially, the two of you don't seem like a likely combination. How did that partnership come about? And Lynch laughs and says, I'll try and tell you, but it's impossible to say why so many things happen. It started with Marilyn Monroe. Mark had a fixation on this book about Monroe called The Goddess, and a producer at Warner Brothers calls me and wants to talk to me about making this thing about Marilyn Monroe based on this book. He liked the idea of a woman in trouble. Actually, his last film, which is called Inland Empire, is subtitled it's a film about a woman in trouble. He just likes that idea. Mark wanted to be the writer on it, and I said I would be the director. And since I wasn't 100% sure which way the wind was going to blow on this thing, I said, fine. I met Mark, we had talks, he went off and started writing. Then that went away and they started writing on another film. He said, would you like to make a comedy with me? He said, Lynch. And Mark said, yes. And Lynch said, it's called One Saliva Bubble. And he said, great. I was still with Dino at the time. So we got this little room at Dino's place and we started writing, and we were 100% on the same wavelength. We were falling on the floor laughing. We thought it was a riot. And we were laughing and writing and laughing and writing. So we finished one saliva bubble and almost made it. I can't remember what went wrong. And the goddess didn't work out either. So now I'm friends with Mark. And then his agent had been wanting to set something up for TV forever. One day Mark and I were talking at Dupar, the coffee shop on the corner of Laurel Canyon and Ventura, and all of a sudden Mark and I had this image of a body washing up on the shore of a lake, and that triggered the whole thing.
They both had an image of a body washing up on a shore of a lake.
They were just chatting. Yeah, that's how he remembers it.
Mark, can you see it? The
Imagine.
body.
So basically what happened was he was going to make one movie with him, and then they were friends, and then his agent wanted him to work in TV, and this TV guy had an idea, and then they pitched it to ABC, and then they made it.
It's a shame that we'll never get to see One Saliva Bubble, whatever it was called.
I can't even be sure that that's true. I just don't know what to believe anymore. And it's just so stupid. But I love the idea of it.
The other great unmade Lynch film is called Ronnie Rocket, and it would have starred Michael J. Anderson, you know, the guy from Another Place, the man from Another Place, the little guy in Twin Peaks. I think there's something to do with music, and also I think Ronnie Rocket can maybe control electricity or travel through electricity. But no, nobody wanted to make that.
Can you imagine if David Lynch wasn't a director? Like, what if he didn't manage to get a break somehow? I mean, what's he doing? It's just he's out in the world, just a weird guy.
He had a paper round to support
we asked the same thing, didn't we, about Alien Art Man.
Giga. It's lucky you can draw. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, there's probably thousands of Gigas out there who just didn't manage to
Gigas.
hook it all up together. Yeah, unfortunately.
I'm really enjoying this whole watching David Lynch thing. And I think in terms of, just as a sign off, I spoke about feeling like a complicated fan of Lynch and a bit prickly and not liking to talk about it with other people. And I've rewatched everything up to Blue Velvet, and I'm halfway through season 1 of Twin Peaks, and I'm just really enjoying it. And the stuff that I wasn't sure that I enjoyed as much, like Eraserhead and Elephant Man, I really enjoyed Eraserhead this time. That was fucking great. And so often in our line of work, or just in general, I feel like I should watch a thing, or I'm interested in a thing, but I don't just want to go and watch it. And I'm gonna buy the Blu-ray for Blue Velvet. I just want to watch the deleted scenes, just because I want to see what they're like. I know they're not part of the film, but I'm just interested, and that hasn't happened to me for quite a long time. I feel, so it's nice.
Well, I'd quite like to know. I think at least tell me what the deleted scenes are like, because I'm fascinated.
I think they're going to make the film worse, so I'm cautious of telling.
I feel certain they must, and I really like that David Lynch doesn't have any. He doesn't have any emotional attachment to them. Like, should I have put it? He's like, no, not in the movie. Why do you think?
Yeah,
because they weren't bringing anything or whatever. I like that he's not, especially because we've just done a lot of movies, particularly with Alien, where it's like director's cut and should this be in it? Shouldn't be in it. I wish I could revisit it. I like that he was just like, I made the movie, I moved on.
It's healthy, isn't it? I'm glad there was never a Blue Velvet 2, which dived into the origins of a young Frank.
Right. Yeah.
That would be the film that gets made today. They'll just make, what's his surname? Frank
Booth.
Frank Booth. That would be the title of the film.
It could be called Back in the Booth.
It'd just be called Booth, wouldn't it?
Back in the Booth.
And it'd be, I can see the trailer for it now. Just like a sour, epic core remix of Blue Velvet with Timothy Chalamet probably playing Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
That could work.
It would,
don't pitch it too hard. It could happen.
You get just big, bold, white font. Booth.
And he's nice, but then someone's mean to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably smash him over the head with a Heineken bottle.
Yeah, exactly.
And there'll just be like, Blue Velvet curtain in the background or something, and people in the cinema will be like, oh, it's
all about, it's about
and there'd be like a slowed down or a version of Blue Velvet playing in the over the trailer.
That's what I just said.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, but I think it was my idea.
Like a drill version.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, well, I hope that never gets made.
I look forward to that coming out. It feels like an SNL skit, doesn't it? Like, do you ever see The Grouch? The Joker takeoff.
What with the Sesame Street? Yeah.
It was so good. Fuck the Joker. I'm sorry if anyone out there likes the Joker, but
I've not
fuck
seen
the
it.
Joker.
Not seen it.
Oh, well, you've not seen it. This is another great one for us to do on the podcast.
I don't want to.
I don't want to.
Oh,
do
you
not
don't
want to
care
see that
what you
film.
want. You don't want to watch Dune Part 1 and
No,
Part
I
2.
don't.
You
but
love
you're gonna.
Batman. You love Batman.
Yeah, you do.
I do love Batman.
I'll
Yes,
only
it was-
watch Batman if you watch this film I apparently want you to watch for some reason, even though
What,
I hate it.
Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie?
Yeah, yeah.
I just...
Hulker.
There's never been a trailer for a movie that has made me not want to watch a movie more than the trailer for Joker.
I think that's totally fair enough. I hated it. It's very...
I already know I'm going to hate it
I didn't hate it.
from the trailer.
I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. This,
Anyway, ending on a note of hate.
Yes.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back with a bonus episode where we'll be talking about some of our
Most
biggest
memorable cinema experiences.
foundational, yeah, and that will be coming on Wednesday in 2 days' time. If you're watching, if you're listening to this on a Monday, otherwise we'll be back next week with Twin Peaks as discussed. Thanks very much, Rob. Thanks very much, Dave.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you next week. You've been listening to Red Shirt Cinema Club. If you're enjoying the podcast and would like to receive 2 exclusive episodes per month, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just check the link in the description. We'd also love to hear from you. Email us at redshirtcinemaclub@gmail.com or follow us on social media. We'll be back with another episode next Monday.